The invasion had been swift, brutal, and absolute. The aliens, known as the Kareth, descended upon Earth with overwhelming firepower and technology centuries ahead of anything humanity could muster. Their ships blotted out the sun, casting the world in an eerie, perpetual twilight, and their ground forces wiped out cities with surgical precision. Entire nations fell within days, their defenses crumbling like sand beneath the weight of the Kareth's relentless assault. Earth had never stood a chance. The Kareth prided themselves on efficiency. They weren't a species known for empathy or mercy. Conquest was their sole purpose. To them, humanity was little more than a primitive species, clinging to an unremarkable planet. In their eyes, Earth was another insignificant prize in their ever-growing collection of conquered worlds. What little resistance remained was disorganized and futile. Pockets of human survivors hiding in the ruins of their once great civilizations. From the safety of their floating citadels, the Kareth generals watched the aftermath of their victory with cold satisfaction. They had won. Humanity was broken. The war was over. Or so they thought, far from the devastated cities. In the wilderness where nature still held dominion, a lone human remained. He wasn't a soldier by any conventional measure. He had no formal rank, no regiment to command. But what he lacked in military titles, he more than made up for in sheer, unyielding will. His name had been forgotten by most, lost in the chaos of the war, but to those who knew him, he was simply referred to as the Hunter. The Hunter had always preferred the solitude of the wild, long before the invasion had come. He thrived in places untouched by civilization, mastering the art of survival in environments that would break most men. It was in these remote corners of the world that he had prepared for this moment, quietly honing his skills while the rest of humanity placed its faith in machines and weapons. But the Hunter knew that brute strength alone would not defeat the Kareth. No! This fight required something more primal, something the aliens could never comprehend. They came in the form of 3 massive shadows that moved silently through the trees, each one a testament to nature's ferocity. The first was a polar bear, its snow-white fur a stark contrast to the dark forest around it. It moved with an almost unnatural grace for its size, muscles rippling beneath its thick coat, eyes burning with a cold, deadly intelligence. The second was a grizzly bear, a towering beast of pure muscle and fury, its brown fur caked with dirt from countless battles. And the third, smaller but no less lethal, was an American black bear, quick and cunning, its sleek form built for agility and speed. These were not ordinary animals. The Hunter had raised them, trained them, and in many ways, they had become extensions of his own will. Each bear was a warrior in its own right, a lethal force of nature capable of feats no machine could match. And together, they were a team, one that the Kareth would soon come to fear. As the Hunter and his bears moved through the wilderness, the distant sounds of alien patrols echoed through the trees. The Kareth were methodical, scouring every inch of the planet to root out the last remnants of human resistance. But the Hunter had one advantage the Kareth didn't. He knew the land, and he knew how to use it against them. The first sign of the alien patrol came as a shimmer of light through the trees, the Kareth soldiers moving in perfect formation, their energy weapons glowing faintly in the fading daylight. They were efficient, emotionless, and precise, but they had never encountered anything like this. The polar bear struck first, a blur of white fury crashing through the underbrush. The alien soldiers barely had time to register the attack before the bear's massive paws tore through their ranks, shredding armor and alien flesh with terrifying ease. The grizzly followed, a living battering ram that sent the Kareth scattering in all directions. The black bear darted between them, using its speed to tear through the panicked soldiers, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. The Hunter watched from the shadows, directing the attack with a calm, practiced hand. He didn't need to be on the front lines. His bears were more than capable of handling the fight. And as the last of the Kareth soldiers fell, the forest fell silent once more. The Hunter stood tall, his eyes scanning the carnage. The Kareth, in their arrogance, had believed the war to be over. But they had underestimated the resilience of the human spirit and the power of nature's most fearsome predators. This was only the beginning. The quiet of the forest had returned, but it would not last. The Kareth, after the destruction of their patrol, would undoubtedly send reinforcements. They wouldn't take the loss lightly. The hunter crouched low, his sharp eyes scanning the wreckage left behind. Alien blood soaked the earth, mixing with the crushed foliage where his bears had torn through the soldiers like paper. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The bears, still standing near the corpses of the fallen, waited for the hunter's next move. The polar bear, its pure white fur now streaked with the blue ichor of the Kareth, huffed softly, its breath misting in the cool air. The grizzly growled low, restless, its massive muscles tense as if ready to charge again at a moment's notice. The black bear was already circling the perimeter, sharp eyes and ears attuned to the slightest hint of danger. The hunter knew time was short. The Kareth would return soon, and they would be prepared. He moved silently to the polar bear's side, patting its shoulder. "We're not done yet," he said, his voice a calm whisper against the stillness of the woods. As if on cue, the distant hum of alien machinery echoed through the trees. The reinforcements were coming. This time, the Kareth would send more than a simple patrol. They would come with full force, ready to crush anything in their path. But the hunter wasn't afraid. He had faced far worse than what these invaders could throw at him, and he had his bears. The first sign of the enemy was a shimmer of light on the horizon, a squadron of alien infantry, marching in precise formation. Behind them, alien hovercrafts floated just above the ground, their energy weapons humming with lethal potential. The Kareth had sent their best soldiers, each one clad in heavy exoskeleton armor, their faces hidden behind emotionless visors. But even their best soldiers were no match for the primal power that awaited them. The hunter signaled to his bears with a sharp whistle, and they moved instantly. The black bear, fast and nimble, darted into the underbrush, disappearing into the shadows. The polar bear and grizzly remained at his side, ready for the impending clash. He didn't have to say a word. The bears knew their roles. The Kareth advanced, their weapons raised, confident in their superior numbers and technology. They had no idea what they were walking into. Suddenly, the black bear struck. It burst from the shadows with blinding speed, slamming into the lead soldier with such force that the alien was thrown backward, his armor crumpling like tin beneath the bear's claws. The other soldiers reacted immediately, firing energy bolts into the trees, but the black bear was already gone, weaving between the trees with impossible agility. The aliens fired wildly, their precision faltering as they tried to keep up with the bear's rapid movements. Then came the grizzly. The massive beast charged headlong into the alien formation, a living battering ram of fury and muscle. Its claws tore through armor and flesh alike, sending the Kareth soldiers sprawling. One alien turned, raising his weapon, but the grizzly was too fast. It slammed into him, knocking the gun from his hands and crushing him underfoot. The force of the grizzly's impact left a wake of destruction, scattering the once cohesive alien unit into chaos. The aliens called for reinforcements, and more soldiers poured in, accompanied by the heavy hum of alien hovercrafts. The Kareth, now desperate, deployed their drones, small, hovering machines equipped with energy cannons. They flew overhead, raining down fire on the battlefield. But that was when the polar bear charged. The ground seemed to shake beneath its massive paws as it plowed through the ranks of the Kareth, unfazed by their weapons. Energy bolts glanced off the thick armor, plating the hunter had fashioned for the bear, leaving it unharmed. With a roar that echoed through the forest, the polar bear smashed into one of the alien hovercrafts, its enormous strength flipping the vehicle onto its side. The bear's claws tore into the metal, ripping it apart like it was nothing more than a toy. From the trees, the hunter watched the carnage unfold, his mind calm, his eyes focused. This was no ordinary battle. It was a lesson, a demonstration of what true power looked like. The Kareth, for all their technology and superior numbers, were no match for the raw, untamed force of nature. His bears were more than just animals. They were warriors, and they fought with a precision that no machine could ever replicate. The aliens began to falter. Their once perfect formation had dissolved into chaos, soldiers screaming orders as they desperately tried to regroup. But it was too late. The hunter could see the fear in their eyes, even through their visors. They were beginning to realize that this was no mere battle. They were fighting something they couldn't understand, something they couldn't control. As the last alien soldier fell, torn apart by the grizzly's relentless claws, the forest grew silent once more. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The hunter stood, his bears at his side, ready for whatever came next. The Kareth had thought they had won. They were wrong. The Kareth commander, Vorik, seated with fury aboard his hovering warship, watching the chaos below. His soldiers were being torn apart by beasts, primitive creatures that should have been beneath his concern. He refused to believe it. With a snarl, he slammed his armored fist onto the console in front of him. This embarrassment would not stand. "Deploy the final unit," Vorik growled, his voice a low rumble through the warship's command deck. His officers, cowed by his rage, quickly relayed the order. Moments later, a massive hatch opened at the belly of the ship, releasing an imposing war machine. A towering mech outfitted with energy cannons and reinforced plating thicker than any of the Kareth's regular units. This was their final weapon, designed for one purpose: total annihilation. The battle was about to escalate to a scale far beyond anything the hunter and his bears had yet faced. On the ground, the hunter sensed a shift. The whir of the descending mech vibrated through the air as the towering war machine touched down in the clearing, flanked by a fresh wave of Kareth elite troops. The bears stood poised, their massive forms brimming with tension, awaiting his signal. He could see the challenge in the eyes of his animals. They knew the battle ahead would be their toughest yet, but they were ready. The Kareth commander himself descended with his troops, determined to crush this defiant human and his beasts once and for all. He was a towering figure, clad in black exoskeleton armor that shimmered with an otherworldly energy. In his hand, he held a massive blade that crackled with electric pulses, a symbol of his authority and power. He sneered as he approached the battlefield. "So, this is a famed warrior and his so-called war machines," Vorik spat, his voice amplified through his helmet's communicator. "I'll enjoy watching you and your creatures break." The hunter said nothing. He stood tall, unflinching as the commander spoke. Words were useless now. This was about action, and he trusted his bears more than any weapon. He gave a short, sharp whistle, and the battle began. The polar bear moved first, launching itself at the Kareth war machine with terrifying speed. It was a force of nature, unstoppable in its fury. The mech's cannons blazed, spewing energy bolts that seared the air, but the bear dodged with surprising agility for its size, closing the distance in moments. With a tremendous roar, the polar bear leaped onto the mech, its massive claws digging into the armored plating, sending sparks flying. The mech staggered under the assault, its weapons unable to shake the bear loose. While the polar bear grappled with the machine, the grizzly charged the elite Kareth troops. These soldiers were nothing like the patrols before, faster, deadlier, and more heavily armored. But the grizzly was pure power incarnate. It slammed into the first line, ripping through their ranks like a hurricane. Alien soldiers fired desperately, their energy weapons scoring hits. But the bear's sheer size and momentum turned each shot into little more than a glancing blow. The grizzly tore through them, its rage unstoppable. The black bear moved like a shadow, slipping between the Kareth's chaotic formations, targeting key weak points. It attacked with deadly precision, outmaneuvering the alien soldiers and disabling their weapons before they could fire. It was the perfect complement to the brute force of its companions, swift and lethal. But the Kareth were no mere prey. Vorik strode into the battlefield, his blade crackling with energy as he charged toward the hunter. The human had expected this. As the commander approached, The hunter drew a long, curved knife from his belt, a blade made for this moment. It wasn't advanced alien technology, but it didn't need to be. This was survival, fought on the terms of the earth. Their blades clashed in a deadly dance, sparks flying with each strike. Vorik fought with precision, but the hunter was unpredictable, using the terrain to his advantage, moving with the fluidity of someone who had spent years in the wild. Each clash echoed the conflict between two opposing worlds, one of technology, the other of nature. Behind them, the polar bear roared in triumph as it tore through the mech's final defenses, ripping off a massive metal panel and exposing the vulnerable core. With a final, devastating strike, the bear brought the war machine to its knees, its remains collapsing in a heap of sparking wreckage. The grizzly, having decimated the Kareth troops, turned its attention to Vorik. Sensing his impending defeat, the alien commander fought with renewed desperation, his strikes becoming more erratic. But the hunter didn't falter. With a swift, precise move, he sidestepped the commander's final swing and drove his blade into Vorik's chest. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, Vorik collapsed to the ground, his eyes wide with disbelief. His final gasp echoed in the silence of the forest. The battle was over. The remaining Kareth troops, leaderless and broken, scrambled for retreat. The warship above began to pull back, realizing they had lost. The invincible Kareth, conquerors of worlds, had been defeated by the primal power of the earth and one unbreakable human spirit. As the warship vanished into the sky, the hunter stood beside his bears, the battlefield silent around them. They had won, but the scars of war remained etched into the land. The bears, their coats streaked with blood and dirt, stood tall and proud. For now, Earth was free, but the hunter knew that true victory was never final.